Hello and welcome to Robin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and we have so much in store for you on the show today. It's been a very eventful week. Top of the conversations that we've had this week is the verdict of the Presidential Elections Tribunal. The Presidential Elections Tribunal, and the verdict that they gave on the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But we'll get into that much later. Also, we've seen a recent hike in the school fees across different public institutions in Nigeria. And that leads us to the question, what is the hope for the common man? Can the children of the poor afford to go to school? With me in the studio to discuss education fee hike and the current economic realities is the student representative, Adeboye Ga Adeboye. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, I would like to know, how do students feel? So very recently, of particular mention, I think Unilag increased their school fees from 16 or about 20,000 to over 100,000, and that has sparked a lot of outrage across board. How do students feel? How do they feel with this increase across board, not just in University of Lagos, we also hear of increments in other federal universities as well?
Well, the major thing that has actually come to the mind of students is the fear of losing their access to education. That is the major fear, because the majority of students that are in the public institutions are low-income family sector, and it's not easy for us to really have access to education, even when we are still struggling with the 20,000, 19,000, and all of a sudden skyrocketing to 100 plus, 200 plus. So it's really a big problem for them losing access to education.
Okay, so what we're looking at and what we're trying to deal with is it's a system that from the part of the university, they're saying that they can no longer cope with the current economic realities. Take, for example, Unilag. Their vice chancellor did say that they spent about 1.6 billion naira on only electricity alone. On the other hand, you see that I think for a couple of years now, ASU has been trying to fight for the government to actually increase the budget for education because education is underfunded. So the schools are saying that, yes, we're going to take the directive from the federal government, and because technically the federal government has said that there shouldn't be any increment, that education is still free, but the schools are saying that they don't have enough resources to keep running the schools, and now they want to transfer the burden on the students. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, that is where the students actually feel offended in the part of the school management, because as much as we believe that government is supposed to be funding education, which we have actually tackled them to do, and they've taken full responsibility to do that, there is still a responsibility of the university to always place the interest of their major stakeholders first, not putting the burden of their excesses on students because they feel they can do and undo. Now, for instance, the instance you made regarding University of Lagos management saying they owe a debt on electricity, it didn't just happen over the night. It didn't just happen over the night. And it didn't mean that the tuition fee of students stopped at any point in time. So that means there's some level of irresponsibility or a neglect by the management to have kept themselves from paying their bills, even when students kept on paying tuition fee over the years. So whose fault is that? It's your fault that you didn't pay the bills when you're supposed to, and it's accumulated. Now the problem, you are now putting it back on the student. That's not fair. That is what the students are actually learning. It's not fair because you feel you are the management. You can actually now decide on what you want to do as students, neglecting the fact that the fault is from you, not the student. That is the fact you are making. There is no year that students do not pay for tuition. So why didn't you pay your bills accordingly? It would not and would never have accumulated to that level. Obviously, there would have been a divertment of funds to another area or side funding. I don't know. I'm not part of the management, but that is what is the obvious reason for them to have accumulated such debt.
Now, let's look at the impact of this hike on families. Generally, most Nigerians are still dealing with the fuel subsidy removal. Minimum wage still remains at 30,000 naira. So take, for example, certain civil servants that earn, let's say, about 50,000 naira. Let's even assume that both parents are employed. It means that they are earning roughly like 100 to 110,000 naira. And if they have to pay tuition fee for just one child, not to talk of if they have 2 or 3 children, you see that this becomes really, really, really difficult. what impact do you think it's having on parents?
You see, that is actually the major problem, and that is more reason why you see a lot of student bodies like NANS and all other civil societies coming up with the protest of this is the major reason why we are saying you shouldn't do this. It's just inhuman. It's just as if the school management are insensitive. It's just practical. Okay, we are having a economic ovulation or whatever it is currently because there's a new structure of government in place. And still yet, that is when you now decide to say you want to start implementing increment of fees. Why don't you at least mitigate whatever situation that is there for a period of time? Or sit down and be strategic about the increment. Yes, we know things are expensive, but you have to be strategic. You cannot just decide and say, okay, all of a sudden from 19,000, students should be paying 195. That is not nice with the situation of things. For a civil servant that is earning, let's say, 50,000, 70,000, let's even go 70,000, and as a kid, that means he has to wait or collect more loans, decide on what to leave out from decisions in the house, on how to actually make ends meet for school fees. What about feeding? What about other things? What about clothing? What about sustaining the home? So these are the critical things that we feel the management, that is the more reason why we said it's not even the federal government this time. It's not even, because the presidency gave a directive when we made the noise that please hold on with the hike.
On the screen right now, you can see the UNILAG students protest, and you can see there's a heavy presence of security operatives just to make sure that things do not escalate. It's a very serious situation, and a lot of students did report a bit of intimidation, infringing on their fundamental human rights to actually protest as provided by the law. The big question now is, how can we all come to a common ground? Because as we know, on the part of the lecturers and on the part of the school management, they're dealing with huge debts. On the part of the students, we're dealing with the fact that we cannot afford to actually pay for these school fees. So what exactly would happen? And let's not forget that some parents actually are incapacitated, and for some reason they cannot pay school fees for their wards. And some of these students are the ones doing menial jobs and trying to study and work at the same time. So for such students, what would be your advice right now, those that are really, really trying to work and study at the same time?
Well, we can only preach hope to them, and we can only say that we'll stand to actually make their efforts not be in vain, in the sense that you cannot be working extra hours when you're supposed to be studying because you want to meet up to more, because of the increment of your school fees, you have to do more work. And it's going to steal out of the time you're supposed to spend studying. So what is now the outcome of you working and studying when you are not going to have enough time to study? And that is why we are saying in their own best interest, we'll actually look for a way to reduce the stress from them for not going to work more just because they want to meet up to the hike in price. And that is why, for instance, one of the students that was at the protest that got a sponsorship, Tokwe, from Malo Services, we're saying that is one out of like 99%. But then we still call on social groups and companies to come to the aid of the school management this time. If they say they are incapable, then why don't you solicit? Why don't you form a merger? Why don't you reach out to private companies? Why don't you even reach out to alumni bodies of the institution to come to the aid of the management if you feel your utility bills are too heavy for you, a burden to carry? So we still believe that, yes, we'll still be covering for the interest of our students by agitating, because that is what we can pull to agitate and to actually tell, like coming to this public space to advocate for social societies and personalities that are philanthropists to really come on board into the management system to actually overhaul all of the stress that the management are saying is too much on them.
Right. Speaking of agitation, there were reports that there was intimidation during the protest. How true is this?
Well, yes. The particular protest that I held in UNILAG, I was present there. And, as usual, we believe that police would always try in their best interest to protect the community. I would actually applaud the CP. Yes, he had the interest of students because we consulted him too regarding these hiking fees. And he gave us his support. That is CP of Lagos State. But, when it comes to protests like this, it's not all personnel that you see at the protest ground are of good intentions or are of real students.
So there was intimidation.
So there was intimidation. Some of our students were arrested. We had to advocate for their release later on. And then even along the line, we started hearing stories of the management trying to identify some students for one particular faculty and then trying to sanction them because they came to actually express their franchise, which we actually kicked against immediately, that if anything should go wrong, then they will answer.
I think the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos actually debunked that.
Yes, I saw the press statement, I saw the interview to myself, and well, thank God she has come publicly to make a declaration that the interest of those students is protected, that she supports peaceful protest, and she acknowledged that it was a peaceful protest. So we are sitting down in the same way that, okay, she has given her word, so there's no reason for us to be concerned or to be bothered about our student being sanctioned.
All right, so let's now talk about the ripple effects of what is going on. Say, for example, just for some reason, the old rates are not reverted. We have a major crisis at hand. The last time I checked, we had about 10 million out-of-school children. But recently, the UNESCO had come out and they said that right now, that number stands at 20 million out-of-school children.
We should expect more in the next few months.
And now we have an economy, we have a nation where we have a lot of people out of school. What is the implication?
Well, to me, it is life and direct. You see, a lot of students are already in the collapse of withdrawing out of school, going back to learn vocational trade because all of this. We've been dealing with, we have almost 1,000 applications soliciting for support from us that they can't actually sustain their school fees. So yes, be rest assured that the educational sector is going to suffer a lot of setback, and we are going to have even maybe triple the number of the statistics we have of out-of-school students right now because of this. Fine, the management in the school is saying that, okay, they are going to sustain it, but this thing is not sustainable if the right measures are not put in place. So yes, there's going to be a lot of student dropouts, and even the ones that are even in school, that we are student leaders, we are still struggling, that they should stay focused. You know, this idea of school is calm, education is calm, and all of that. There is every justification for them to say it now.
So you're saying that the vices will also increase in terms of
obviously
internet
fraud and all of those vices. In fact, some of these students are already even instigating it, that maybe they should even scrap education and let them go and do something else, which is not something we want to do. And then the whole syndrome that is going on now, the jackpot syndrome. Some of our students are saying, why would I pay 200,000 for an institution in Lagos State or in Nigeria that will not even be effective or will not give me as much bonus, as much advantage, like putting that funds together and leaving the country to study abroad? So this is still going to bring problem to the holistic nation, to everybody as a nation, because by the time undergraduates start running away, postgraduate students start running away, then maybe the management themselves will be the students and will be the lecturer by themselves.
Okay, well, we're out of time. Any final words before we wrap up this segment?
Well, I'm just going to plead with all institutions across the country to please tend up to be considerate in all of these issues about increment. We understand and we know that the situation of the country is bad, but you have every mechanism to solicit for support, to mitigate your expenses, and to limit what you put money on. You cannot be putting money on unnecessary things while you leave the necessary things out of place. And we implore Mr. President to please come to the aid of Nigerian students to actually ensure that these fees are reverted. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. And to you watching, let me reiterate that education is the passport to the future, because if we want to have a healthier, if we want to have a holistic nation, we have to ensure that we tender to our young ones, we tender to the students, because they are the future of this nation, all right? So that they don't end up getting into certain vices. It's still Robbing Minds, and Robbing Minds continue after this break. Stay with us.